my recent video on Fort Knox and the gold bullion that may or may not be still stored inside, we established that the US gained most of Britain's considerable gold reserves on the order of Prime Minister Winston Churchill in order to pay for military supplies to keep Britain fighting in the dark days of 1940 to 41. Some 11,000 tons of British and Empire gold ended up inside Fort Knox by 1942. In 2025, 80 years after the end of World War II, Britain's gold stocks are still quite low, with some 310 tons of gold bars stored in the vaults of the Bank of England in London. This is largely because Gordon Brown in 1999 sold off 400 tons of British gold at the lowest possible price, and our bullion stocks have never recovered. However, up until 2019, the British also held another 100 tons of gold at the Bank of England that didn't actually belong to Britain, but gold with a history directly related to World War II. This bullion was part of the national wealth of Poland, but it was kept in Britain until 2019, 80 years after Poland was invaded by Germany and the Soviet Union. The story of Polish gold is one of the most extraordinary tales of World War II. By August 1939, it was becoming clear to the Polish government that Hitler might very well invade, and quite soon. Once the invasion commenced on the 1st of September, the Polish authorities ordered national treasures and gold bullion saved. With the battle for Poland raging, the Bank of Poland removed its bullion resources, totaling 80 tons, from Warsaw and dispersed them to three centers: Brest, Lutsk, and Zamość. But the military situation continued to deteriorate, and bank officials decided to evacuate Poland's gold out of the country to France. Not a very easy task in 1939, owing to the German army standing between it and the French frontier. A circuitous and difficult route was worked out. Now unable to ship the gold to France from a Polish port due to German air and naval supremacy, it was decided to evacuate all 80 tons of bullion in a road convoy, which delivered the treasure to Sniatin, a railway junction settlement on the border with neutral Romania, now the only safe route out of Poland. 4 tons was actually missing by this point, commandeered by the Polish army in the hope of using it to buy supplies. However, this wasn't the case, and some of it was later reunited with the 76 tons of bullion that left Poland. In the meantime, the governor of the Bank of Poland travelled on ahead to Paris to make sure everything was ready to receive the gold. However, the Germans warned Romania that it must not allow the Polish gold to cross its border, but after some negotiations, a train was duly sent with the gold to the Romanian port of Constanta on the Black Sea. The British watched all of this with great interest. The Polish asked for help from the British Consul General, Anthony Kendall, and he was able to make some material assistance via the British government. An oil tanker, the Eocene, under skipper Captain Robert Brett, who was British, was ordered to Constanta, and then the gold and 27 Polish nationals were loaded aboard. They were destined for neutral Turkey. The Germans continued to threaten Romania through diplomatic channels, but the Eocene was permitted to sail by the Romanians, Captain Brett following a course through shallow coastal waters. The 16th of September 1939, Eocene safely reached Istanbul in Turkey. The French now offered direct assistance in the form of the battleship Jean Bart, but on arrival in Istanbul, the French warship was not allowed to tie up at the dockside. Turkey was very wary of antagonizing the Germans, with which it had strong historical ties, defense contracts, and various other commitments. Turkey was, of course, neutral and keen to preserve its neutrality. The Polish ambassador to Turkey, Michael Sokolnicki, had meetings with the Turkish government, and a compromise was hammered out. 2 choices were presented by the Turkish government to the Poles. Firstly, Poland could loan the gold to Turkey via the British and French. Or the Poles could remove the gold from Turkey overland to Syria, a French mandate and therefore Allied territory. The second option was the most attractive to the Poles, but the Turks then announced that they would charge 2% of the value of the gold as a fee for allowing the transit of the bullion through their country. This fee had to be paid in cash. These funds were not available to the Polish embassy in Ankara. Searching around for solutions, the Polish ambassador's wife suggested securing a loan from Archibald Walker, an acquaintance, who was the regional head of the American Soconee Vacuum Oil Corporation in Turkey and an avowed anti-fascist. Walker happily produced the cash, and the gold was quickly offloaded from the Eocene and placed aboard a train. On the 22nd of September 1939, while the battle for Poland raged on, the precious gold arrived safely in French Syria, and the French army took responsibility for its transport and security. Sent to Beirut, the Polish bullion was divided into two caches. The larger, consisting of 886 crates of gold bars, was loaded aboard the French cruiser Émile Bertin for immediate shipment to Toulon in southern France. The Émile Bertin arrived safely at Toulon on the 27th of September, with the second shipment sent on two more French cruisers, Epervier and Vauban, also arriving without incident at Toulon on the 6th of October. The bullion was then reunited at Nevers inside a vault, the Bank of France, where officials carefully counted everything in the presence of Polish officials. The French authorities gave the Poles two choices concerning the gold. Either deposit it into an account at the bank, or store it in a vault under Polish supervision. The Poles naturally chose the second option. Poland was overrun and occupied by the Germans but did not officially surrender, and a Polish government in exile was formed in Paris. But then Hitler turned his attention west in May 1940, unleashing his huge invasion of France and the Low Countries. Paris fell on the 14th of June. The French moved quickly to secure their own gold, as well as that of Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, and Poland, which had been stored in France for safekeeping. All of the gold was sent to various ports, Brest and Le Verdun on the Atlantic and Toulon on the Mediterranean. The French gold was shipped out of Brest aboard 5 warships, while Belgian, Polish, and other bullion was shipped by train to Lorient. The Polish gold was loaded aboard a cargo ship, the Victor Schocher, but where to go? French North Africa or the United States? On the 18th of June, the Victor Schocher sailed, joining up with French bullion ships, and arrived safely in Casablanca in French Morocco on the 23rd of June. A small portion of French gold was sent on to the United States aboard U.S. Navy battleships, but the bulk of French, Polish, Belgian, and Dutch gold was taken to Dakar in French Senegal. In total, gold weighing 2,080 tons that belonged to these various nations had been kept out of Hitler's hands. With the occupation and division of France into two zones, the occupied zone in the north and along the Atlantic coast, which was governed directly by the Germans, and the unoccupied zone, known as Vichy France, based on the south of the country, a problem arose. The Vichy regime was politically disposed towards the Germans, and most of France's overseas colonies had also declared for Vichy. The leader of the Free French, General de Gaulle, was based in London. The Germans demanded that the French hand over their gold and the gold of the other nations held at Dakar, the intention, of course, to get their own hands on this. Eventually, after considerable German pressure, the French shipped Belgian and Luxembourg gold back to France, where it was then taken to Berlin and sold off. Post-war, France had to compensate these two nations for their lost gold. The Germans particularly wanted to get their hands on the 76 tons of Polish gold in Senegal. The French argued that this gold was retained by France to pay off debts owed to it by Poland. The Polish became naturally extremely concerned about their gold, and in 1943 dispatched Major Stefan Michalski to Algiers in French North Africa to talk to the French. The Polish suggested that Vichy France transfer to the Poles an equivalent amount of French gold stored in New York City. The French refused, and the Poles sued the Bank of France. A US court then seized an equivalent tonnage of stored French gold held at the Federal Reserve Bank in New York City. The trial was then delayed indefinitely due to the raging war in Europe. Sometime later, the French agreed to release the Polish gold stored in West Africa. The Poles then dropped the lawsuit, and the French began the process of turning over the gold to the Polish government in exile. 6 US Navy warships were directed to collect the Polish gold from Dakar and deliver it to New York City, this occurring in March 1944. The gold was then stored at the Federal Reserve Vault in Manhattan. Poland then divided the gold into 3 caches, retaining 43% of it in New York, and sending 45% to the Bank of England in London, and 12% to Ottawa in Canada. The problem post-war was that Poland ended up being handed to Stalin in 1945, and any attempts at restoring democracy or independence were thwarted, Poland becoming a People's Republic for 50 years until the end of the Cold War. Poland's bullion, stored in the Bank of England, remained where it was throughout the Cold War and well into the 21st century. However, 80 years after the German invasion of Poland in 1939, in 2019, Poland demanded that its gold, plus more bullion that it had purchased, be repatriated to Warsaw. The secret operation involved the movement, largely by air, of 8,000 gold bars, weighing in total 100 tons, and worth at 2019 prices some £4 billion. The gold was firstly moved in secret, heavily armoured convoys at night to a British airport close to London, requiring 8 individual shipments. Then loaded aboard aircraft, and 2 large-scale flights were made to Warsaw. It was one of the largest movements of gold since World War II, and resulted in Poland's bullion finally being where it was supposed to be, in Poland. Many thanks for watching. Please subscribe and share, and also visit my audiobook channel, War Stories with Mark Felton. You can also help to support both of my channels at PayPal and Patreon. Details in the description box below.